Hello, I am back for a small rant. I've been away for a little while and I'll make this short. And I'm sorry if I sound out of breath. I am pregnant. Yay. So forgive that, please. Basically, I want to talk about how COVID, I'm going to call COVID, COVID to maybe minimize the flagging on this video. Anyway, so during COVID, I feel that many things have become very apparent and easy to explain about human nature and possible governance structures. If anyone's been paying attention, I have not been an ancap for the last several years. I'm kind of subscribed more to a old books patchwork, but with competing monarchies instead of corporations, preferably Christian monarchies. And yeah, of course, these leaderships can become tyrannical, but you need the ability to throw those people in a pit, and it's easier to throw one king in a pit than 99.9% of the people who are voting for stuff. So yeah, that sounds very messy. The reason I've switched over to this governance mindset is I do believe people need to be governed. I believe people need a strict set of laws and rules that are based on objective moral principles, and we need leadership that adheres to those objective moral principles. And like I said, as soon as they stray away from that, they should be legally allowed to be thrown into a pit. Basically, when people do not have objective moral rules that govern the laws, we get subjective democracies, which are hilariously tyrannical. And and then what about ANCAP? If you just leave people alone, you don't coerce people, and you let them cooperate and just live peacefully amongst each other, they will act well and good. True. But when are people left alone? This is an ideal circumstance that doesn't happen. Maybe it'll happen for 10 years, maybe 15 years, but it runs out. Someone will always try to coerce you, whether it's entities of power, those can be governments or other countries or groups of people, independent groups of people, other religions, other communities, other cultures. You are never left alone. In fact, I would argue that, the default for people is generally good if they are not under stress. But as soon as there are stressors, people's true self comes out. So it's not a reliable baseline. People are not generally good under stress. The true self of people comes out under pressure. So you scare people a little bit, you give people a little bit of unearned power, you propagandize them in any way, you inflict environmental, financial, or social pressure on them, and people will show their true colors. And most people have an insatiable lust for power, not even deep inside of them. It's pretty on the surface. And they will take any opportunity to act on that power. So yes, the ANCAP worldview is just as idealistic as Marxism. It's great on paper, under perfect circumstances, which makes it just a philosophy. I still like it, not Marxism. I like anarcho-capitalism as a philosophy, but it doesn't scale, and it probably in this world wouldn't even work on a small scale. Too many stressors. Okay, so what are my COVID examples? There have been mask mandates worldwide. Let's take America. Some states have mandated masks for little kids, even right now. And some states haven't. Some states went the opposite way and made it illegal to force masks on kids in public schools. And you know what happened? The how do I frame this? The psychopathy is bottom up, not top down. A bunch of people in both public schools and private schools that were not forcing all kids to wear masks, and I'm talking about 5-year-olds. The moms and the dads made a big stink and a big fuss, and they either left the schools or threatened to leave the schools or just, used other coercive, or they whined. I don't know. They made sure that at least their kid can remain masked in the classroom. So it's not necessarily top down. This comes from the general population. And yes, they had to be scared and they had to be propagandized to some degree. But if you take that out as an excuse for why this happened, then you're thinking in a vacuum. Like, it's just the reality. People will always be fear-mongered and propagandized. That doesn't change the fact that they're still responsible for their actions. So do not put solely responsibility on the, the overlord class, right? The general population holds just as much responsibility for tyranny as does the 0.001% that makes the tyranny, like seeds the tyranny, okay? So you can't have a lie without someone who believes the lie. Both parties are culpable. Another example, like an opposite example, I'll give you two. Canada and Canadians have had a pretty intense time during COVID, very stringent rules, the longest lockdown in the world, etc. And Canadians pretty much happily abided to all the rules. And then in Ontario, they went as far as to tell the cops to stop random cars and see where they're going. And the cops said no, they will not do that. And they backpedaled the law immediately because the cops just wouldn't do it. And it was embarrassing for them. Then the government also tried to ban outdoor public spaces, like people weren't allowed to go to parks or playgrounds, and people that same weekend just all went out to parks and playgrounds and ignored the law, and they rolled it back 2 days later because it was embarrassing because no one listened to the law. You need people to abide by the law for it to matter. Period. If even 60% of the people don't adhere to the law is null. It's just a piece of paper, right, guys? So it's just that simple. Another thing, the vaccination passports. Before New York made them a legal thing, restaurants were already doing it. Restaurants demanded it to be law. Whereas in Austin, there was one restaurant that made it so you had to be vaccinated to enter the restaurant, and people made a huge fuss and probably threatened to sue them, and they had to roll that back and not do it. So, not to be typical, but people do have all the power. They really do. So, we all need to stop worrying about the tiny overlord class that we all like to, feel blackpilled about. No, be blackpilled about the general population. They are the bureaucrat class who reads your paperwork and makes you file more of it and then wants to fill out more themselves. Like, that is the general population that we're dealing with today. And it's not as simple as to say, oh, they're low IQ morons. That's the problem. A lot of people who aren't very intelligent actually are less law-abiding. And then a lot of people who are very intelligent in every other way are doing things like getting vaccinated while they're pregnant, even though there's a 30% miscarriage rate and the manufacturers do not recommend this whatsoever, just because the government said you should do it. So very intelligent people, they're maybe even more easily scared, and maybe they have more pathologies like wanting to control your body or control your unborn child's ability to not catch COVID or whatever goes through their head. It's not as simple as, oh, these people dumb. A fun litmus test I like to do to random people is like if they want to take their mask off and they're not sure, I go, oh, don't worry, I got all 5 types of vaccines just to be sure. And I see how they react. Or a great one to do to a mom is like, oh yeah, I actually got my toddler scheduled for a Moderna trial. Do you want me to get you on there? I'm so lucky. And if they're like, oh yeah, that's great, then I know that we're not going to be friends. Anyways, not to totally backpill you guys, but it is the general population you should be worried about, and things will only get worse. And I do hope you can find solace in your close relationships and your community and the nice things in your life, and try to maintain your dignity through all of this bullshit. Take care. God bless.